Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you're watching or listening. My name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we'll provide another installation into our Anti-Federalist Papers series going on number 53. So if you haven't gone back and watched 1 through 52, I would highly encourage you to do so because understanding the Anti-Federalist Papers in addition to the Federalist Papers, will provide you a very well-rounded, advantageous understanding of the U.S. Constitution, and understanding the U.S. Constitution will be absolutely necessary if you intend to combat any sort of lawfare waged against you, your loved ones, or your hard-earned property. So let's go ahead and jump on over to the Anti-Federalist Papers. There are multiple institutions from which you can get a paper and digital copy of the Anti-Federalist Papers. Go ahead and get both, just in case you can't access one or the other format. And while you're out there looking, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and get a copy of the Federalist Papers so you can join us in comparing and contrasting the arguments for and against ratifying the U.S. Constitution. Excellent. So number 53 is titled, A Plea for the Right of Recall. Written by Amicus, appeared in the Columbian Herald August 28, 1788, he says this. Sometime before a convention of the United States was held, I mentioned in a paragraph which was published in one of the Charlestown papers that it would be acting wisely in the formation of a constitution for a free government to enact that the electors should recall their representatives when they thought proper, although they should be chosen for a certain term of years, as a right to appoint where the right of appointing originates with the appointees implies a right to recall. As the persons appointed are meant to act for the benefit of the appointees, as well as themselves, they, if they mean to act for their mutual benefit, can have no objection to a proposal of this kind. But if they have any sinister designs, they will certainly oppose it, foreseeing that their electors will displace them as soon as they begin to act contrary to their interest. I am therefore glad to find that the state of New York has proposed an amendment of this kind to the federal Constitution, that the legislatures of the respective states may recall their senators, or either of them, and elect others in their stead to serve the remainder of the term for which the senators so recalled were appointed. I wish this had been extended to the representatives in both houses, as it is as prudent to have a check over the members of one house as of the other. Some persons as object to this amendment in fact say that it is safer to give a man an irrevocable power of attorney than a revocable one, and that it is right to let a representative ruin us, rather than recall him and put a real friend of this country and a truly honest man in his place, who would rather suffer 10,000 deaths than injure his country or sully his honor and reputation. Such persons seem to say that power ought not to originate with the people, which is the wish, I fear, of some among us, and also that we are not safe in trusting our own legislature with the power of recalling such senators as will not abide by such instructions, as shall be either given them when chosen, or sent to them afterwards by the legislature of this or any other state, or by the electors that chose them, although they should have met together in a body for the purpose of instructing or sending them instructions on a matter on which the salvation of the state depends. That we should insist on the amendment respecting this matter taking place, which the state of New York has proposed, appears to me to be absolutely necessary. The security of each state may be almost said to rest on it. For my own part, I would rather that this amendment should take place and give the new government unlimited powers to act for the public good, than give them limited powers and at the same time put it out of our power for a certain term of years to recall our representatives, although we saw they were exceeding their powers and were bent on making us miserable in themselves by means of a standing army, a perpetual and absolute government. For power is a very intoxicating thing, and has made many a man do unwarrantable actions which before he was invested with it he had no thoughts of doing. A prime example of this is George Washington and the Whiskey Rebellion. In case you're unfamiliar, definitely go watch that lecture. I hope by what I have said, I shall not be thought to cast even the shadow of a reflection on the principles of either of the members of the Federal Convention. It is far from being my intention. I wish for nothing more than a good government, and a constitution under which our liberties will be perfectly safe. To preserve which, I think the wisest conduct will be to keep the staff of power in our hands as much as possible, and not wantonly and inconsiderately give up a greater share of our liberties with the view of contributing to the public good than what the necessity of the case requires. For our own sakes, we shall keep in power those persons whose conduct, good grief, pleases us as long as we can, and shall perhaps sometimes wish, when we meet with a person of an extra-worthy character and abilities, that we could keep him in power for life. That's the primary argument against term limits. I know I hear that being tossed around right now as a solution for potentially nepotistic or despotic appointees to the U.S. Congress, but this is the primary argument against it. By giving term limits, you are again asking the government to confine itself. You are asking the government to take on parental powers. If you don't like how a representative is representing you in any level of government, it is your duty, it is your job to get that person removed and replaced with someone who institutes or implements the interests of the state. It is not the job of the government to limit itself. It is your job. And if there's someone who, for his or her entire life, represents your interests or the interests of the state, then you would definitely not want to have those term limits in place, so that way you could continue to re-elect that person, since they are the best one representing the interests of the state. That goes away when you set term limits. That's the primary argument against term limits. Term limits is a request that the government confine itself, when in actuality the only person responsible, the only person with the authority and the dignity to do such a thing is the citizens of the states. That we could keep him in power for life. If there is someone you find that is of high character and consistently, routinely represents the interests of the state, if you put in term limits, you have to replace that person. And what a sour day that would be. Having to give someone who is willing to, even at their own detriment, represent the interests of the state, being cast out of government because of a procedural requirement rather than the vote of the electorate. On the other hand, we shall dismiss from our employ as soon as possible such persons as do not consult our interest and will not follow our instructions. Exactly. If you don't like the way they're doing it, get them out of office. Don't ask that the government kick them out of office for you. For there are, I fear, a few persons among us so wise in their own eyes that they would, if they could, pursue their own will and inclinations in opposition to the instructions of their constituents. In so doing, they may perhaps once in 100 times act for the interest of those they represent more than if they followed the instructions given them. And you know why they do that? Feed you crumbs so that they feed you crumbs so that you don't recognize or realize that they are in possession of the loaf, that they are in possession of the bread. It is a strategy that was, despite my vehement hatred for the author, his strategies, his tactics, his observations of reality, and I despise him because he was deceitful, he was malevolent, but his recognition of political strategy was sound, and it was applicable, and it's effective. That is a strategy that is specifically articulated in The Prince, Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. From time to time, you give the citizenry what they want in tiny increments. So that way, for the majority of the time, the tyranny and the despotism you practice is completely forgotten, is overshadowed by those minute instances of actually representing your constituents. And that's what this gentleman is talking to. But I wish that we would never suffer any person to continue our representative that obeyed not our instructions unless something unforeseen and unknown by us turned up, which he knew would alter our sentiments if we were made acquainted with it, and which would make his complying with our will highly imprudent. In every government matter on which our representatives were not instructed, we should leave them to act agreeable to their own judgment, on which account we should always choose men of integrity, honor, and abilities to represent us. But when we did instruct them, as they are our representatives and agents, we should insist on their acting and voting conformable to our directions. But as they would each of them be a member of the community, they should have a right to deliver to the houses of representatives of which they were members their own private sentiments, so that if their private sentiments contained cogent reasons for acting contrary to the instructions given them, the other members of said houses, who would not be bound by said instructions, would be guided by them. In which case, that would take place, which would be most for the public good, which ought to be the wish of us all. Signed, Amicus. Excellent. So that is all that is to be said for number 53. If you have any questions about what was said in number 53, maybe questions about what was said in the preceding papers, or if there's a topic you'd like me to cover in a future lecture, go ahead and post those down in the comments, because the entire purpose of the Calhoun School of Law is to provide you with the necessary skills and information to combat any sort of lawfare that will be waged against you, your loved ones, or your hard-earned property. So please, if you have any questions at all, go ahead and post them down in the comments. Excellent. So my name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information that plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and if not, while you're down in the comments, go ahead and let me know how I can do better so I can best serve that purpose of helping you. I hope you'll have a wonderful day, and I'm not sure what the topic for the next lecture is going to be, but I'll do my best to make it as informative and entertaining as this one, if not more so. Regardless of the topic of the next lecture, until I see y'all then, I bid you all farewell.